can't talk fast, and so that's why I wanted to know how fast I needed to talk. But I am excited to be here. And if you believe that God places you where He needs you to be, where He needs you to be here, then you'll understand why I'm doing this work. Some of you have heard this story before, and some of you may not. I'm not a native of Cincinnati, although I have lived in Cincinnati now for almost 30 years or so. I've lived here long enough to call it home, even though I've not been here almost half of my life, but not quite, but long enough to be able to understand it, to be able to have most of my friends here now, and to have grandchildren here and really be concerned about how people live, work, and play and thrive here in Cincinnati. And I come from a place where some people to this day are still not living well. I'm a native of Youngstown, Ohio. Oh, yeah. I still have family that live there. My oldest son and some of my grandchildren are in Youngstown. I have in-laws that are still in Youngstown. And so I come from a place that some might say is depressed and sad. And indeed, when my husband and I go home, it is a very sad place. It's not the place of our childhood. But I'm also a child of the 50s. And because I'm a child of the 50s, I've got some baggage, if you will. And that baggage has caused me to have some of the passion that I have around this work. I'm the eldest child of a single mom. I have 3 siblings. All of us have different dads. And if you know anything about the 50s, unlike today, being a single mom was even worse than it is today. The reason why that is because there were no government kinds of things to help support a black single woman at that time. My grandparents, my maternal grandparents, while they were able to overcome some of the injustices that were going on during that period of time, my grandmother was not happy. She was absolutely not having it. My mother was the youngest child, and even though she was an adult when she had me, she was not a teenager, she was in her 20s, my grandmother still ostracized her and said that she was no good. So she was the black sheep. Now, she was the baby girl, and my grandfather said, you know what, we got a house, and so therefore everybody gonna live with us. So it was tough because my grandmother did not necessarily agree with that decision, but the decision had been made because back then the men were ruling the house. So I grew up in that environment and started school right after Brown versus Board of Education. And because I was a little smart, I guess, they said I could go to school with little smart white kids. And so here I am going to school with children who did not look like me, and I did not understand that, of course, on TV at that time there wasn't anybody that looked like me on TV. And so I wanted to be white. And I tried to do that. I tried things like Ajax, or some of you are old enough maybe to remember Ajax. Just tried to scrub the black off of my skin to try to get myself to be like others. I did not know any black Catholics when I grew up because white people were the only people that were Catholic, and we were not Catholic, and I wanted to be Catholic, and I wanted to understand why I couldn't be Catholic, and all these other kinds of things. So a lot of what I dealt with at that time was related to my own self-esteem and understanding, in spite of the fact that I lived in a house with an extended family, with a grandfather who loved me dearly, with an aunt, my mother's sister, who poured into me. She was the first person in our family to graduate from college. She was an educator. And with a community that was trying to understand what this whole notion of integration really meant. Fast forward, in spite of the educational successes that I had, I graduated in the top 10 of my class. Was offered lots of scholarships. I was still looking for love, still looking for the kinds of love. No one said I love you in our home. There was no hugging in our home. And so in spite of all of the other kinds of things that one might suggest would make you okay, I was looking for love elsewhere and got pregnant a senior in high school. My mom was beside herself because all the time we were growing up, she said, I don't want my girls to go through what I went through. So it's the only time I ever saw my mother cry. I was devastated that I made my mother cry. So she lied to the school and told them that when they said that they thought I was pregnant, and I was an officer of the National Honor Society. Fortunately, I was like really skinny, so instead of like doing like this, I did like this. And so she lied and said, no, I just think she's gaining weight. She lied because you couldn't stay in regular school when you were pregnant back then. And I graduated with my class. I graduated with my class with my honor cords on. 2 weeks later, gave birth to my son, started school that fall, and graduated on time as a registered nurse. Now, I'm an outlier. I'm an outlier because everybody in my family did not necessarily have that happen to them. I was fortunate enough to have a really great career, not because of things that I did myself, but because of things that others saw in me and promoted me to be able to see in myself. I say that because that's a very important piece of what we need to consider when we talk about the Poverty Collaborative. And this is one of the things that I hope to bring to the table. The other thing I hope to bring to the table is the importance of understanding, listening to the voices of the people who are living and living their lives in a society that's perhaps not just to them. In institutions and structures that have been made perhaps to be barriers against their being able to be successful. I believe that we can resolve that. We can resolve that because we're all bright people. And I'm going to share a little bit of that with you today. One of the things that people often say is that just work hard. If you just work hard, you can do this. These are some quotes that I really like that speak to me. And you know, the Child Poverty Collaborative came out of outrage. Outrage from the business community who were embarrassed by some of the statistics about Greater Cincinnati. And they said, how could it be? How could it be that these things are happening in Cincinnati when we have one of the largest United Ways in the country? We have the 6th largest United Way in the country in per capita giving. And we're not the 6th largest community by any means, right? We have one of the largest community funds in the Greater Cincinnati Foundation with over $600 million in assets. We have lots of other foundations and a lot of compassion and giving that's been going on for decades of time. So instead of outrage and instead of people saying work harder and do better and all these kind of things, I say to you that it takes more than that to look at the decades of dysfunction and social emotional turmoil and trauma that has been caused on the individual, their families, and subsequently their beliefs. Because now they believe this, now it's become the norm. And just because we think it ought to be different doesn't mean that it's going to be different. I hope that makes sense to you. I had to understand that for my own family. I have sons who live in poverty. I had no idea how that was going to happen. Because I had a very successful career. My sons grew up in a middle class environment. They went to private schools. I sent them off to college. They didn't graduate. They made other choices. How could that be? Now they're 40 and 39 now. I've subsequently talked with them about it to get a deeper understanding of all of the pieces that come into play when we talk about helping people get on a pathway to success. It's more than just working hard. So, this is what made everybody angry. 39% of children in Cincinnati live in families below 100% of the federal poverty level, and this is for a family of 3, which is an income of about $19,000. Now, think about that. Think about what that means. Think about what it means for a single person trying to live off of $12,000, because that's what it is if you're single. Now, I've said that to some business colleagues, and they're like, oh, there's no way. I mean, way? I used to watch my mother squeeze those pennies. My mom used to squeeze a penny and make it holler. Okay? And then get upset if I tried to buy her something because she thought that I was trying to make it holler. And I tried to tell her, no, Mom, I got more than a few pennies. But this is what people are doing every single day. And they're working. They're working, and this is what they're making. These aren't the people that are standing on the corner with their signs asking us to help them. These are the people that go to work every day. Some of them working 2 and 3 jobs to make that amount of money. We're talking people who are making $9.50, $10 an hour. Next slide. is what it takes to be, quote, self-sufficient. Self-sufficient at now, and this is from 2015 or 2016, at 2018, which just came out, self-sufficiency at 200% of the poverty level for a family of 4 is $51,200 and something thousand. So it's about $52,000. Self-sufficiency at 250% of the federal poverty level is now $62,000. That means that they can pay their rent, pay their bills, have a car, all the kinds of things that you need to survive in Cincinnati when you think about average rents and things of that nature. So 72% of jobs in our region pay less than $50,000 a year. 72% of our jobs pay less than $50,000 per year. So when we still tell people they need to work harder.
Yeah.
Just saying. Just saying. Employment. 62% of children in poverty have at least one working parent. I've been doing work with children and their moms over at the Hughes High School now for 3 years. All of my moms, of the children that I work with, all of those moms work. Every single one of them. I'm in the 3rd year working with the same cohort of kids. I started with them when they're in the 9th grade, they're now in the 11th grade. Same kids, same moms. They think I'm their mom, because I'm old enough to be some of the kids' mom's moms. They trust me. They're doing the best that they can, and many of them are working 2 and 3 jobs. And so when I say to them, okay, I'm going to send a tutor to your house, because I want your kid to be able to take advantage of the Cincinnati Pride Grant. Okay? They're like, well, Dr. Bankston, you've been to the apartment. You don't want them to come, it's not safe. I said, these tutors are used to coming into this neighborhood. If I can come to the neighborhood, they can come to the neighborhood. Because we've got to work with them. Now they trust me. It took almost